Welcome to the second episode this week of the Legacy Warriors podcast, where we talk about the top two feeder leagues to the UFC, where we got the LFA, and this week, Cage Warriors is doing a double header of events, the first of which took place earlier today, and the second of which, Cage Warriors 185, will be taking place on Saturday afternoon as a bit of an appetizer to the UFC Vegas 104 card. Most importantly, in the main event, we got one of the hottest prospects on the European fight scene, and Luke Riley looking to establish himself again as a perfect candidate either for the Contender Series or to jump right into the UFC if he can go out there and get another victory. He takes on a tough Teriel Abbasov, who will be surely looking to test him in the grappling realm and looking to push him a little bit more than he's been pushed in the past, but should still be a fairly good spot for Riley to show off his skill set. Reminder, I have all my tracked plays for this card on the Lock of the Night Patreon page. Not to mention, I've already gotten started on the breakdowns for UFC London, which I'll be dropping a full podcast for on Sunday. But if you want early access to some of those spots, and I might even be firing off on some of those bets nice and early before the line starts to move, you'll be able to find all that good stuff on the Lock of the Night Patreon page. And also, if you want to find out more about these fighters and looking for a place to study up on some of these cards, well, we covered 19 different promotions on the MMA Fight Archive, where we've just surpassed 5,000 fighter profiles for you to browse through and ensure you're getting as many direct links as possible for those fighters. Again, 5,000 fighter profiles, 19 different promotions. It's all on the MMA Fight Archive. Check the link in the description below. 7-day free trial available for that. Why not give it a whirl and see if it's something that's up your alley? All right. Let's get right into breaking down this, I believe, 14 fight card that we got for Cage Warriors, which I believe is going to be taking place 11 a.m. on Saturday Eastern time, and then obviously rolling into the main card a couple hours later. So let's get right into it. First fight up, we got Joshua Adeboye coming in at plus 140, going up against Pierre, who comes in at minus 170. Now, Adeboye is a 6-2 amateur looking to go into his pro career here. Looks to be a solid all-around fighter, has some good grappling, obviously very strong and physical in the grappling approach. Not a whole lot of threat in the BJJ realm, but does a good job in terms of establishing top control and looking to grind most of his opponents out. He trains out of Team Renegade, and they're obviously honing in on his striking chops to try to round out his game a little bit better. But I think he's going to be up against the BJJ black belt Pierre. Now, Pierre went 9-1 as an amateur. He turned pro at the end of 2019, which he won pretty quickly, and then he hung up the gloves for about 5 years. It turns out his girlfriend was battling a ton of health issues, from cancer to having her leg amputated to eventually passing away in February of 2022. And Pierre has been training through all of that, competing in some grappling competitions as well, but it seemed like his entire focus was on taking care of his girlfriend, which obviously is not a thing that he needs to do anymore. But I believe that's also a reason he has now turned his attention back to the mixed martial arts world. He's big, he's strong, he's a nasty BJJ black belt, and he showcased some of his striking in his return bout back in November. I believe he'll be able to utilize those technical grappling advantages he'll have here against Adeboye and allow him to get some dominant positions in the grappling realm, which will eventually lead to him getting a submission within the first 2 rounds. Again, Adeboye seems to be a little bit more focused on MMA at this stage of his career, but I think Pierre is very sharp in the grappling realm, and that's going to cause Adeboye a ton of trouble here, and I don't mind that minus 170 line either. All right, next up, Breen coming in at minus 2,000, going up against Elvis Oliveira, who comes in at plus 1,000. No need to get too deep into this fight. Breen should win this. He made a bad fight IQ move last time around against the BJJ black belt, which saw him lose his first professional fight by getting submitted. But he should utilize his striking advantage here to really touch up this Brazilian journeyman who's not been doing good as of late. Riding a 3-fight losing streak, complete tomato can, and I believe he's coming in to do a job here. With that said, do not parlay minus 2,000 no matter what matchup you're talking about. A banana peel moment can absolutely happen in a volatile sport like mixed martial arts, so there's no need to even bother betting on this matchup. But I'm going to take Breen to win it. All right, next up, Ryan Hewitt coming in at -155, going up against Christian Tebbett, who comes in at +125. Now, Hewitt was finally able to earn his first Cage Warriors victory last time around, as he was able to get a body kick KO over his last opponent, Reggie Hingston, I believe it was, and that showcased where Hewitt is good. He's a pretty pressure heavy striker who likes to utilize the open stance body kick to try to hurt his opponents. Even in his 2 Cage Warriors losses to date, he's made a pretty good account of himself, but eventually would fall off, whether it was getting caught in that heel hook like he did against Anders Sanchez, or just falling off with his takedown defense and ended up getting grinded out by Jer Harris, I should say. He's a solid fighter, trains alongside Jake Hadley, has a good training camp, but it's just his ability to stay effective for the complete 15 minutes rather than just letting his confidence kind of just drop off or his focus drop off. Christian Tebbett is now 0-2 with the Cage Warriors scene since joining the promotion. He's looking for his first win since September of 2023. He's a long, lanky fighter that likes to establish his range and utilize combination striking. He's very good in scrambles and has some sneaky submissions up his sleeve. And I think that could potentially be the way he's able to get rid of Hewitt here. Now, Hewitt is a guy, I believe he is better than the amateur record he put together, where I believe he went 2-9. And I think he's obviously better than the 2-2 record that he has. But I think Tebbett is a guy that's underachieved as of late, and I think that he can actually show off his game here against Hewitt. Look for him to utilize a little bit more of an effective striking approach, and I also wouldn't be surprised if he looks to end up getting to his grappling in the latter half of this matchup, and I think he could actually pull off the submission here against Hewitt. Close fight, closer than the odds are indicating. I am going to lean with the underdog ever so slightly here. Low-level fight all around. Don't get that twisted, but I think that this is where Tebbett could actually pull away and get his first Cage Warriors win. All right, next up, Chris Price coming in at -300, going up against Allison Marreira, who comes in at +240. Now, Price has been out of action for over 18 months. Last time around, he made quick work of Deck Dean, quickly taking that fight to the ground. He actually ended up getting reversed, but he was able to reverse back, ended up getting the dominant position, and then quickly got the submission victory after that. He's very clear in terms of how he wants to attack his fights. He's looking to get you to the ground ASAP. I know nothing about his striking because he almost gets into the grappling 15 to 20 seconds into every single matchup that I've seen him have. All 6 of his pro fights have finished in the first round, showcasing what his style is. Now he's going up against Marreira here, who started his career 5-1. He took a year and a half away from action, probably due to COVID. And then when he returned in 2021, he's gone 3-8-1. 3-8-1 ever since, and he's 1-5 over his last 6 fights. He seems to be a little bit of a regional tomato can, a guy that is powerful and physical, but if he can't get that instant success, it seems he starts to fall off in terms of confidence and effectiveness, and I think that's where Price will be able to kind of get to his game, really pressure Marreira, get that top position, and quickly get him out of there. With that said, as we saw in the Michal Folk fight for Price, when he ends up being the nail, he's not that good of a nail, and he'll actually end up losing. But I'd be surprised if his confidence slips here at all. I think he's the far better fighter, and once he establishes that top position, it's going to be a long, or maybe actually a very quick night for Marreira here. So give me Price within the first round. Next up, a very fun fight here between Joe Fields coming in at -140, going up against Enrico De Gangi, who comes in at +110. Now, this was just a pick'em yesterday, and it seems like there is some love coming in on Fields now, pushing him to that -140 line, and it makes sense. This guy is a high-level prospect who's currently 3-0, originally trained alongside Cage Warriors champions George and Harry Hardwick, but it seems like he's gone down to San Diego to train alongside the other guys over there at MMA Fight Academy. We got Anthony Orozco, who's headlining the Cage Warriors card that goes down today. He trains alongside Teddy Stringer, who's co-main eventing this card, and a couple of other, Jack Humphries, I believe, as well, who's also on this card. And they're just building a solid crop of European prospects that are going to smash through the Cage Warriors scene and eventually make it to the UFC. He has a great all-around game. His striking mainly has to do with the calf kicking style, but then from there he eventually looks to get opponents to the ground, and from there he doesn't lay and pray. This is a guy that looks to get to dominant positions and just butcher his opponents, as his nickname indicates. He's going up against Gangi, who has some solid strength of schedule over his career, not just his pro 4-2 career, but also his amateur career as well. He's a heavy pressure, high volume fighter that likes to push the pace and really get opponents into the grappling realm. Often we see him pushing his opponents against the cage, looking for takedowns, which aren't all that effective, but the constant work of him pushing that pace usually makes it hard for opponents to get comfortable with their own game. Last time around, he suffered a loss to Scott Harvey, who was able to stop the majority of his takedowns outside of round 2, and then from there land the more effective shots in the striking realm, which ultimately gave Harvey the decision that night. It's all about grappling, cage pushing, and control for this Italian, but I think he's going to struggle to do that against Fields here, who has a great defensive grappling game of his own. Once they're in the open cage, I think that we'll see Fields' calf kick really come into play, slowing down Gangi and opening up punching opportunities and combinations for Joe Fields. I think we'll see Fields land more damage over the course of 15 minutes here to earn him this decision victory, but you have to be ever so slightly worried about the continuous takedown attempts and control that Gangi might be able to get against the cage. But if Fields can keep from getting taken down and inflicting his own damage while defending the takedowns, this is a fight that should surely be scored in his favor. All right, next up, Shea Ingram coming in at -600, going up against the very short notice Diamantis Chondronikolas, a Greek fighter coming in, making his Cage Warriors debut, like I said, on short notice. Now, Ingram actually made his pro debut last time around, and he was a lock of the night play for me, and the fight played out a little bit closer than I thought, but I thought it was clear that he won rounds 1 and 3 and utilized a very grueling style to try to get that victory. He was 9-0 as an amateur and faced some stellar competition on the amateur scene before turning pro, and even his pro debut was against a very tough opponent. He's very good all around with solid combinations and striking, but it's really his grappling where he does not settle for bad positions and often does a good job in terms of establishing dominant positions and either controlling them or finding submissions. He's going up against a short notice Chondronikolas here, who is a newly minted BJJ black belt and rides a 2-fight winning streak. Although that last win did come last year against an opponent that was 3-15. He's all about dragging fights to the ground and try to get to his BJJ, but his wrestling is not that good. His level of competition, not that good. And he leaves plenty of openings, especially in the striking realm, because he's quite slow and not athletic whatsoever. I'm looking to see Ingram smash through him here. Whether Ingram decides to get this into the grappling realm or looks to keep this on the feet, utilizing his grappling defensively and then just battering Chondronikolas on the feet, I think he can do that and get away with this and probably even finish it within a round and a half. But I love Ingram in the spot. I would expect him to be closer to a -2,000 line rather than a guy like Breen. So -600, parlay him up all you want. I think he's probably one of the best spots on the entire card. Again, -600, super chalky, but a reliable parlay piece in my opinion. All right, next up, we got Ethan Charlton coming in at +100, going up against Leon Naumann, who comes in at -130. Now, starting off on the Charlton side of things, he trains at a Manchester top team, and he is going to be making his Cage Warriors debut with a 2-0 pro record. However, he does actually have a pro win from May of 2023, which is actually getting him to a 3-0 record, and that was against a fighter that now has a 6-1 record out of Amsterdam. That was a fight where we saw Charlton showcase a solid striking approach and even some heavy top pressure where he was able to break his opponent down and end up winning that fight on the scorecards and really looking like momentum was on his side throughout that entire fight. This kid has also been taking some boxing matches over the last 2 years. Very clean, very slick striker, and a very solid and underrated fighter all around. I think people are harping on him because his official record reads that he has not competed since 2022, and that is absolutely false. I've been trying to do my due diligence in terms of actually getting that win on Charlton's record on Tapology, but Tapology is refusing to add it unless they can get the full event details for that event. They have no record of that fight. And with a little bit more of digging that I was able to do, it seems like it was Charlton's opponent's friends who put that event on, and they're refusing to acknowledge that fight or that event even happened. Hence why we can't get this fight on Charlton's record. So that's something to note in this matchup. And that was a tenured opponent. That was a solid opponent that Charlton was able to get his hand raised over. Great pressure, great striking, good head movement, good grappling. This is an unknown dark horse that not a lot of people know about, and I think this weekend we'll actually see him splash onto the Cage Warriors scene with the big win. Quickly get into Naumann. He's a BJJ black belt. He lost his last Cage Warriors opponent fight to Naglis Kanasauskas, who just came up short fighting for a title last weekend. Naumann had some good success with grinding out the first round with his grappling, but then it seemed like his cardio fell off a cliff, which led to Kanasauskas eventually landing that big shot to put him away at the ending of the second round. Naumann might be able to have some early success here against Charlton, but I think Charlton will eventually start pushing that pace that Naumann will not be able to keep up with, and I think we'll see Charlton actually finish him in the second or third round. Again, not a lot of people know about this kid, which is why we're getting such a great line on him here. I'm going in on him here, and I feel pretty damn confident about it as well. All right, next up, Sam Kelly coming in at minus 200, going up against Richard Kallos, who comes in at plus 160. Now, Kelly, looked damn good after that 11-second knockout victory he had over Pav Sahota, which had followed his victory over Jack Eglin, who's a streaking prospect right now. He was able to put him out cold in the second round with a beautiful submission, but he's gone 0-2 ever since then. The first loss was to Gianluca Scotoli, who was able to grind him out up against the cage and just outwork him. And then the next one was a loss to Alessandro Giordano, who just was in a title fight last weekend as well against Liam Gittins. The Giordano fight, Giordano busted Kelly's nose within the first round of that fight, and it seemed to really impact the effectiveness of Kelly as he continuously got to his game, but was ineffective in terms of being successful with it. Like, he could not get the takedowns, he could not grind out Giordano or land the damage that he wanted to, and that led to Giordano eventually finishing him in that third round. I think Kelly is better than those last two performances show. This guy's really good in terms of getting to his striking when he needs to. He has a really good kicking game, but it's really his grappling and pressure that often breaks opponents down and sees him getting his hand raised. I think being away from the cage as long as he has now will revitalize him, will re-energize him, and I think we'll see a pretty damn good version of him this weekend as he takes on Richard Kallos, who's looking to build upon a big upset victory that he had over Tommy Brunning back in November, upsetting the minus 850 favorite, quickly submitting him via armbar. Kallos has a black belt in judo and often looks to get to that grappling game as soon as possible because his striking leaves a lot of holes and issues for him that opponents can take advantage of. He's 37 years old, and it just looks like he's more of a test for prospects at this stage of his career, and he is a guy that seems to have a bit of a cardio issue. If he can't get to his wrestling or his judo, he will find himself in trouble, and I expect him to see that trouble this weekend against Kelly. I want to be more confident in Kelly in this spot, but I still believe that this is a style that he can shut down the judo of Kallos, really push the pressure against him, stay away from the submission threat, and eventually wear Kallos down and finish him in the second or third round. I think Kelly is gifted and still has a ton of potential, and those two losses will do wonders for him. Let's see if he can just get back on the winning track this weekend against a veteran like Kallos. Next up, Jack Humphries coming in at minus 410, going up against Nick Beukema, who comes in at plus 310. Probably butchered Nick's name there. So we're just going to go with Nick for the rest of this podcast. But Humphries had a stellar 10-3 run as an amateur, and now he has 2 straight wins as a pro. Originally trained alongside Jake Hadley, but has jumped down to the MMA Fight Academy to get that more focused training with those guys down there in San Diego, training alongside the likes of Anthony Orozco and obviously Teddy Stringer, who co-main events this card. He's mostly about the grappling game, looking to showcase a dominant top game, whether it's raining down shots to get a finish or opening up submission opportunities. Humphries is absolutely nasty when he can get into his groove. It's also clear that his striking is improving at a steady rate as well. He goes up against a guy in Nick Beukema who's 5-0 through pro and amateur. He's 2-0 under the Cage Warriors ranks. And last time we saw him was in September, where he got straight to his grappling and eventually found a submission within 2.5 minutes. He wants to get right to the grappling, and it seems like he has pretty much focused on BJJ from the moment he started martial arts. He's a training partner and a pupil of Orlando Wilson Prince, who is also a BJJ black belt who fought last week for the Cage Warriors promotion. I believe Humphries and Beukema will have a close fight. I actually put Humphries closer to -150, so to see him all the way up at -410 is a little bit surprising, but I think that he does have the better overall game here. I think he's a little bit stronger and a little bit more physical, and that will allow him to stay away from the threat of the BJJ that Beukema normally looks to put on his opponents. Line is too wide here, though. I just can't get behind it. I wouldn't be surprised if there are people looking to snipe that underdog price on Nick. I could completely understand that. I might even be enticed to do so. But in terms of a straight up prediction, I do think it's going to be Humphries who ends up grinding this matchup out. All right, next up, we got Omiel Brown coming in at -550, going up against Samuel Blasco, who comes in at +400. Now, both these guys love to go out there and smash their opponents as early as possible. Last time around for Brown, we saw him actually win the Prize Fighter one-night tournament in September, defeating his first opponent in the first round and then eventually grinding out Bumara Kamara over the course of 15 minutes to get that win on the scorecards and obviously earn that victory. He has a nasty front choke series that he's able to establish if opponents go for desperation takedowns, but it's usually a striking where he looks to walk his opponents down and put them away. He has been bonked and finished himself by Yanis Bashar, who eventually found himself on The Ultimate Fighter. So I think that we've seen Brown try to implement some of the clinch and grappling to his game so he can be a little bit more cautious about the power coming back his way. And I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to do that here against Samuel Blasco. Blasco throws with a ton of heat himself and also has a nasty front choke that he can establish if that's what opponents want to try to exploit of his. But I do think it's going to be Brown who showcases a little bit smarter of a game. Normally, I would jump at the opportunity to play the under 1.5 here, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see Brown look to wear Blasco down in the clinch first before he starts to let go with his big strikes as Blasco slows down and then eventually get him out of there in the second or third round. I'm not paying chalk on Brown, who has been deaded before, and he's fighting a big power puncher here in Blasco, but I will still pick Omiel Brown to win this matchup, and I think he gets it done in the second round. All right, next up, George Smith coming in at +225, going up against Ali Santalahti, who comes in at -285. After 3 years away from Cage Warriors, Smith returned in July and was able to show off his slick BJJ as he got the submission win over his opponent. He did find himself in some bad spots, but eventually managed to snag up at that triangle choke with 12 seconds left in the first round and get the tap. He's a grindy grappler with a little bit of a sketchy gas tank, so that's something to be worried about if he can't get his opponents out of there early, and I think he's going to have to unfortunately face that here against a guy in Santalahti, who's a BJJ black belt as well. Santalahti, a little bit of a tough run as of late. He came up short against Giacomo Michelis last time around, who's a 6-1, 7-1 fighter now, but that now drops Santalahti to 1-4 over his last 5 fights. When he can't get to his grappling, things start to get a little bit shaky. But when he does get to grappling, he's pretty comfortable in terms of getting those dominant positions and grinding his opponents out. He's coming into his 23rd professional fight, showcasing that he's gotten a ton of great experience, not just fighting for Cage Warriors, but all the other promotions he's been fighting for. He's been fighting, some of the better guys on the regional scene. I expect him to get to his grappling here against Smith. Might be competitive early, but if Santalahti can keep a high enough pace, provide enough resistance against Smith, he'll wear Smith down and eventually finish him in the second or third round. I could see this finish coming in the third round, which is why I'm not overly confident in the under 2.5, because it could absolutely come after that 2.5 minute mark in the third round. But I do like Santalahti here, and I wouldn't be mad at anybody looking to parlay him either at this -285 line. All right. Next up, we got Adam Cullen coming in at -625, going up against Nonato Jr., who comes in at +450. Now, Cullen, He's been scheduled to fight some very tough competition, like guys like Ermil Jafari and Tobias Harila. Both of those matchups have not come to fruition, but we've also seen him come up short against some tough guys like Harold Cohen, and even the first fight that he lost to Dimitri Jerlin. He is a guy that looks to get to his grappling immediately, utilize a ton of pace and power, alongside with pressure, just pushing his opponents back, getting them to the ground, and then quickly advancing to dominant positions where he can start raining down with nasty elbows and submission opportunities. He is a training partner of Paddy Pimblett out of Next Gen Liverpool, and I think he is a guy that can still make it to the next level of the mixed martial arts world, but he needed those losses to Cohen and Jerlin to show that he can't just get away with continuously dragging these guys to the ground and just smashing them from that top position and thinking they'll go away within one round. So now he's learning to manage his gas tank a little bit better, and that's definitely going to help him here against a BJJ black belt in Nonato Jr., who's currently 4-1 over his last 5 fights, but a lot of the opponents that he's defeating, very low-level competition. You're talking about a guy who just got a 21-second guillotine submission over his second last opponent, a submission where he put the guy out completely in 20 seconds. It was hilarious how quickly he got to it. Striking leaves a lot of openings. He doesn't mind biting down on the mouthpiece and throwing back with some power, but better technical strikers will be able to take advantage of that and eventually put him away as well. I'm expecting Cullen to smash through Junior here. I think he nullifies the BJJ approach from Junior and eventually gets to his own game and starts to walk him down and get him out of there. But again, it's hard for me to trust Cullen at minus 625, especially against a guy that has over 20 professional fights as well. So I think Cullen wins, but this is going to be another opportunity for him to just slowly grind things out and gain that experience when he needs it. But I do like Cullen here, and I think he ends up winning it on the probably within the first 2 rounds. All right. Co-main event time, where we got Teddy Stringer coming in at minus 400 going up against Antonio Sheldon, who comes in at plus 300. Now, starting off on the Stringer side of things, he's one of my favorite prospects on the Cage Warriors scene. Now, he had a 15-8 run as an amateur. Now he's undefeated as a pro with a 4-0 record, finishing all 4 of those opponents in the first round. He's a BJJ brown belt who does a great job in terms of getting opponents to the ground and then getting to a dominant position and quickly looking to get them out of there. As we've seen in his last couple of fights as well, he's starting to improve the confidence in his striking, which allows him to throw with even more power and eventually get his opponents out of there with big shots as well. Another MMA Fight Academy prospect here. I think he has a bright future, especially with the type of performance he's been putting on lately. And now he's fighting a tough veteran who had some solid heat on his name a couple years ago as well. And this could be a defining moment for Stringer to see whether he's ready for the Contender Series later on this year. Now he's going up against Antonio Sheldon, who's riding a 2-fight winning streak. He's a BJJ black belt who often looks to take opponents to the ground and grind them out. Last time around, he was struggling to get his takedowns against Tommy Mearns, but he was the better striker, as Mearns doesn't have much to offer in the striking realm, which allowed Sheldon to just pick him apart, utilize a solid kicking game as well, even lasted a nasty front kick up the middle, or landed a nasty front kick up the middle. But it's all about getting fights to the ground where he can often find success from that top position. But I think he's going to struggle to get to that here against a guy like Stringer, who's going to be way stronger than him, should be able to outmuscle him. And even on the feet, I think Stringer might be able to dictate the pace there and land with power and speed that Sheldon has just not faced over his last couple of fights. I got in on Stringer myself around minus 200 just yesterday, and now the public seems to be piling on him, doubling his number up to minus 400 now. But I think that this is a spot that Stringer can continue his early winning ways and actually win this fight under 1.5 rounds. So if you can still get that total at a decent enough line, it's worth taking a shot on. Look for Stringer's striking and power advantage to be the difference maker here. All right, next up, the main event. We got Luke Riley coming in at minus 800, going up against Teriel Abbasov, who comes in at plus 550. Now, Luke Riley is probably going to be the hottest European prospect on the free agency block after he finishes this fight, which is the last on his Cage Warriors contract. might be the hottest one since Paul Hughes last year, who ended up signing with the PFL. Now, Luke Riley is one of the more entertaining fighters in the entire European fight scene, showcasing a very fun striking style, putting together solid combinations, good kicking, and a very good defensive grappling game, which allows him to shut down any opponent looking to take him down and then forcing them to strike with him, where his durability is held up clean enough for him to still put together a very solid and undefeated record thus far. He's fun to watch. His fight against Alexander Loof is one that I'll always tell people to go back and watch. An absolutely crazy back and forth matchup where Riley ends up getting the finish and getting the win. But still, that will take years off your life. Just ask Mason Jones, who was a similar prospect a couple years ago, who had all these wars, but it seemed to start catch up with him, and that would start to impact some of his performances. But credit to Mason Jones, got cut from the UFC, ended up getting signed back to the UFC, and now he's coming back and making his second debut, I guess you can say, with the UFC in a few months here. But Riley's still young enough, still talented enough, and he's going up against the tough Tariel Abbasov, who started off his career 8-0, which eventually led him to losing to a former UFC fighter in December of 2023, where he came up short against Hani Jason. That was followed up by another loss by eventual tough enough champion Jamie Siraj, but he was able to bounce back and get a quick win in his last matchup. He's a guy that wants to take you to the ground and try to smother you from that top position and work for a dominant position to try to get that finish. And in the striking realm, usually leaves a lot to be desired. That's where he can be hurt, and that's where he can eventually be put away. His cardio is a bit of a question mark as well, but it's clear he's going to challenge Riley in that grappling realm. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if we're actually able to see Abbasov get some solid control time through that first round, but I think that's going to come with a lot of resistance here, which will eventually see him slow down, leading to Riley starting to muster up a comeback and eventually win this fight in the second or third round by finish. He's a superior striker, and I think that he will be good enough in terms of providing the resistance required for Abbasov to start slowing down, and then from there we'll see Riley start pulling away with this matchup and end up getting that finish. So I'm going to go Riley. Not parlaying him at minus 800. I don't care. If you don't have all the advantages in a matchup, you have to be very wary about the spots that you're willing to parlay. And Riley just does not have the overall grappling advantage here, but he will be able to provide enough resistance that Abbasov will start to slow down sooner than later, leaving him ripe for the picking for Riley to pick him apart and put him away. And I look forward to Riley getting onto the Contender Series this coming season, without a shadow of a doubt. All right, there you guys go. Cage Warriors 185 breakdown for you guys. Again, this card starts 11 a.m. on Saturday morning, so make sure you guys get your studying in, get your bets in, do whatever you got to do. I already got all my bets locked in for this card. Make sure you guys check out the MMA LOTN Patreon page for that stuff. And otherwise, good luck on all the rest of your action this weekend, folks. And I'll see you guys on Sunday for the UFC London breakdown. And the next week, we got a double header of Legacy Warriors podcast, as we have LFA going down and Cage Warriors as well. I'll have those all broken down on the YouTube page for you guys right here. Good luck. I'll see you guys on Sunday. Peace.